as we are approaching summer here in the States, if you have kids that are school aged, especially thinking middle school, high school, and potentially even college, this time of year might be full of tears, anxiety, frustration, stress. So much happens at the end of the school year, especially for our kids, middle school, high school, right? They are navigating all the end of year stuff on top of the fact that they have exams, right? And there are kids out there in high school that might even be dealing with AP exams, thinking about college, all of that. In your house right now, if you are feeling this stress or anxiety, or maybe you are a teacher yourself and you're seeing it in your classrooms with the kids that you're teaching, right? The purpose of this episode here today is to really help you understand fundamentally why this may be happening, right? I feel a real problem here that really results in the fact that we don't have systems in place for our kids to really support them with time management and planning. All right. So today I want to talk about that so that you've got plenty of time between now and the next school year to actually know what you can do to make this time next year look very different in your house. All right, friends, welcome back to Work-Life Harmony. Last year, here at the Pink Bee, we released a brand new program called Top for Students, and it was an online course along with a physical planner that is a specific time management and planning framework designed thinking about those kids middle-aged kind of through college. And it was the first year that we rolled this out, and the feedback was spectacular. All right, so spoiler alert, last year I did an episode on the podcast about what a student planning framework might look like. Well, now that we've put this program in the hands of families all over the country and other countries as well, I wanted to take some time here on the podcast today to revisit that because we've made some changes. We have a new program rolling out, and I am so passionate about this that I wanted to get another episode out there. The fact is, we really fail at teaching our children. And by we, I'm not meaning you, the listener. I'm just meaning the general we, right? We don't have courses on this as kids are getting older. It's not embedded into our school system, teaching time management and planning, similar to finances, right? We don't do a very good job educating our kids there inside of our school structures. I'm not saying you aren't doing a great job at home. And then we launch all these human beings as adults into the world with jobs and all of that, where most companies aren't providing those skills either. What subtly happens is people start to think that they either were born with the planning and time management gene or they weren't. And they're like, well, if I wasn't, then I guess I'm just destined to struggle my entire life. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. And I'm living proof of that. I was not born with that gene. All right. Yet here I am doing this for a living and loving what I'm doing. But it's because I had programs and time invested in teaching me these skills so that I could then turn around and teach them as well. So if you are, living with kids right now that are kind of in that middle school through college years, or perhaps you are an educator yourself, and you are constantly bombarded with this feeling of like, why is everything being happen last minute? Why are things falling through the cracks? Like, didn't they know to start that paper sooner instead of waiting till the night before? Why am I making a trip to the craft store today? Because they're finishing the project that they've known about for the last 2 weeks, right? And you're thinking to yourself, like, what's wrong with my kid? Are they a procrastinator? Are they being lazy? Are they disorganized? The chances are probably the answer is no. The fundamental issue is we drop our kids into a system that they've never been trained for, right? So here's what I mean by that. We start our kids in early education inside of an elementary school classroom environment where there's one teacher, their primary teacher for the entire year that knows everything that's going on, right? They are the one person assigning projects, homework, schoolwork, etc. And so it's very easy to create plans and communicate and support our kids when we're in that environment. Then we transition them into a middle school environment where they go from one teacher, one classroom, suddenly to where they are navigating 6, 7, 8 teachers in different classrooms with different styles, different ways of assigning, and different homework assignments. And we flip the switch from this to that, and then we wonder why they are drowning, why it is feeling like they're drinking from a fire hose and they can't figure out all the things that are going on and all the moving parts, and everything feels like it's happening last minute. I can remember when my daughter first left elementary school from 5th grade and went into 6th grade, her 6th grade school, as a parent, there were 3 different portals or tools that the teachers were using to assign work. So even within the one school, they were not even centralized on one place to show, here's assignments, here's homework, here's projects. As a parent, and I am someone that is, prides myself on being organized and good at planning and all of that, I was struggling to get the information needed and piece it all together because it was done differently even within that one school. All right. So the way that I like to illustrate this to adults that I think really hits home is, imagine if you yourself were juggling 7 different part-time jobs, right? So over the course of a day, you went to 7 different jobs for maybe an hour each, and each job had its own boss, and each boss had their own style of communicating, and they each had their own way of, like, assigning tasks to you. Think about how hard that would be for you to juggle the incoming requests, information, knowledge, assignments across 7 different jobs every single day, to put a plan in place for how you're spending very, very limited time after school, in the evenings, and on the weekends. That just brings anxiety up to me when I think about that. Then layer in extracurriculars, family time, etc. So that's kind of fundamentally what our kids are going through. And I think even just seeing that, understanding it, and recognizing it is already half the battle. Because when we recognize that, it helps us as parents kind of be like, oh, okay, this is a massive transition. So let's all get on board for tools, techniques, and systems that we can use to help support this. Because the sooner your children are able to learn time management skills, organization of information, planning ahead, right? Planning for worst case scenarios, right? The sooner we get those skills in place in our life, the better off we're going to be. It's going to make future transitions, getting that first job, that first move, etc. It's going to make all of that so much easier on our kids. Now, I think people fundamentally know that, hey, this is a skill that we want to teach kids, but unfortunately, the solutions that are out there fall short. So here's what I mean by that. A lot of schools now are realizing, oh, our kids need help with planning. So they will issue planners to the kids. And there's 2 fundamental reasons why this kind of falls short or just flat out fails. Number 1 is, if you look at the vast majority, I can't say all, right? I've never seen everyone, so I can't give an exact percentage, but I look at a lot of them. If you look at the planners that are issued to our kids in schools, they are essentially daily planners, right? They're turning a page every single day. I know my daughter was issued one in elementary school, and it was basically a glorified to-do list every day. Or if it's a weekly planner, it's structured where it just has a block for, like, class 1, class 2. So again, it's a glorified to-do list. It's a place to capture information and potentially assignments, but it is not a visual aid in showing them how and when they're going to get the work done. Really, you're no better off just taking a blank notebook in to take notes in all day. All right. So if you're new here to the podcast, I have tons of episodes on why daily lists fail us. So the sooner we can teach that to our children, the better off we are. The second reason why, even some of the student planners I've seen out there that are really good, the structure of them is great. The reason why they fail is they're not teaching the students how to use them, right? Handing someone a tool and go, oh, here's a planner, does nothing for our kids. And I feel like I am 100% allowed to say this because I too sell planners, and I am the first one to tell you that a planner does not teach you how to plan. So if your child's just being issued a planner, or you see one that's advertised as the best student planner out there, but there's nothing embedded in it teaching them how to plan. This is why usually by, week 2, the planner just starts collecting dust. It gets left in the locker, it gets left at home, maybe it's under the bed, you find it 9 months later. This is why last year we knew I needed to do something about this, right? There are skills that our kids fundamentally need to learn. I'm going to take a couple minutes here and walk you through a 4-step planning framework specifically for students. And this is what we take a deep dive on and teach inside the Top for Students course. When I say 4 steps, what there really are is kind of 4 planning rhythms that is going to be really, really powerful to teach your kids as soon as possible. So, the first planning rhythm is at either the semester or trimester level. All right. And for those of you that are familiar to my 4 levels of planning, this is similar to the annual planning that I teach every October. This part of either the semester or like trimester kind of level of planning, this is something that I encourage you to do with your student, right? And if you have multiple students, this should be done as a family. And I want to tell you why it's so important that this should be done as a family. In a lot of households, right, there's usually a person, oftentimes the mom, that is the gatekeeper of all the information. She's the chief information officer, she's the chief operating officer. She feels like she is the only one logistically trying to figure out how everything works and how it ties together. So, this is why I want to see this step done as a family, because the level of planning that's happening at that semester level is at the start of the semester. You are using a page in your planner that's more of that month at a view. All right. And the family together is putting on here what are our larger obligations as a family outside of school. Maybe your child's, has a baseball tournament one weekend or a soccer game on Thursday nights, right? So we're thinking a family trip that may be coming up. So we're integrating in at kind of that high level for the semester. Here are important dates that involve your student, whether it's directly them or the family as a whole. So again, the information that's going to go on here are large level events happening outside of school, and then kind of that school calendar. Because at the start of the semester, you're not going to know all their homework assignments, right? But usually there's a calendar that's showing what are half days, what are teacher work days. They may proactively be telling you when exam weeks are. Maybe your child is having to do end of year or semester level testing or ACTs or SATs, right? Any of that relevant information gets written on the monthly view of your student planner. All right. And again, this is why I say do this as a family, because it's important for everyone to see, hey, what are some big things that we all need to be aware of, right? Like it's important for both my husband and I to know when is exam week so that we're not preparing some huge family vacation the weekend before if we know that's a time that, we're going to want our child studying, right? Prepping for exams. So that's kind of at the top level is that's kind of semester level planning. Now, the second level of planning, as we kind of move down in level of detail, is the monthly level planning. And again, I encourage this at a more group or family level of planning. This is where each month, once you're actually in motion during the school year, typically this is where you're starting to get more assignment level information. All right, so at the start of every month, we're reviewing, hey, what's going on with our after school activities this month? What's going on as a family this month? And are there any big projects or tests, et cetera, that are coming up this month? And we want to make sure that we're capturing that. All right, so that way your child and their student planner is seeing what is important information to them. And then they're seeing the importance of sharing it back out to the rest of the family, right? Hey, I've got this huge tournament Saturday and Sunday. They're seeing that. What they're also able to see is, oh, maybe I have a test that following Monday. And so now you get to start having those proactive conversations around, hey, look, the calendar's showing you've got a tournament that weekend, and the very next day is a big test. So now we get to start having discussions around how are we ensuring that we have time on your calendar so that you're not doing this at 11 o'clock on Sunday night, right? So these are the conversations that we get to start having when we're doing this higher level planning with our kids. Now, the third and fourth layers become far more detailed. And these are the skills that, the way I teach it inside Top for Students is I encourage you to teach your children how to do the next two layers, and then they will start doing these on their own. So the third layer is a weekly planning process specifically for your student. All right, it's a very streamlined version of what I teach in my huge time management framework, the top program for women, but this is built specifically for a student's life. All right, so what we're looking at here is this is teaching your student the importance of looking at a 7-day window with the outcome of it, what they learn in this weekly planning process, right, is really going to support them in helping prevent procrastination, help preventing last minute panics, and really empowering them to help drive decisions around when it's going to make the most sense for them to be doing, work in school with everything else integrated, right? So this weekly planning process is not just about their schoolwork. We're integrating everything else that's going on inside their life for the week. And then finally, something very specific to the top student planning process, the most detailed layer is what I call their daily check-in, because there is work assigned typically on a daily basis in school. Maybe not in every class, but chances are your student's coming home with some sort of homework. So in that fourth layer, we teach a quick daily check-in with the lens of, did anything get assigned today that's due tomorrow? So that they're strategically looking at their evening, right? Because that's typically all they have to work with to say, how specifically am I getting this done? And then secondly, was there anything assigned today with a future due date? And what we teach in there is, how do we take that and build it into the rest of our week and our monthly planning, right? So again, all of this planning is really doing a couple of fundamental things. The wins that are going to happen from the parent is that you stop becoming the chief information and chief operation officer for your children's lives, right? You are empowering them to stay on top of their own schedules, right? And you're teaching them life skills that are just transformative the sooner they learn it. Now, starts to change for your student, right, is they start to take a lot of ownership over this, and they start to be able to, one, advocate for their time, and number two, they start to see how they can prevent procrastination. Right now, am I going to sit here and say that your child's never going to procrastinate? Of course not. Guys, I still have temptation of procrastinating, but they will see the trade-offs. They will see the impact. What's going to happen is there won't be the surprises, the I forgot, well, I didn't think about it. I forgot I had the soccer tournament and the test the next day, right? When we teach them these visual planning tools, all of those scenarios really start to lessen. All right. And when I talk about them advocating for their own time, this has happened on more than one occasion now, where my husband and I have, we usually kind of plan on two really big weekends in the year, spring and a fall, where we are kind of outside doing a lot of like yard cleanup and maintenance. And it's a family affair. We all live here, so we all participate in it. Well, on more than one of these weekends, because of this planning system, our daughter has, managed to, rightfully so, kind of talk her way out of it. Not by, I don't mean like talking her way out of it, but showing us she's been able to come home because we've taught her how to manage a calendar, and has been able to clearly show us, hey, look, I have these two projects that have been assigned. Here is when they're due. Here's my calendar showing when I'm working on schoolwork. I need the time this weekend to do that. This is what I have. And if I don't do it this weekend, then I'm going to be staying up way too late all next week getting it done. So because of that, she's been able to advocate for herself and has been able to reduce sometimes the amount of chores or outside responsibilities that we were counting on. So again, that can be a win for your kids as well. One that happened for us just recently is, I've been sharing some on the podcast. We've, recently have moved my mother-in-law here into town, and there's some work that we need to do at her house before we sell it. And we were, determining the best weekend to be able to spend time doing that. And what worked for all the other people outside of our family to do that made the most sense. We were able to very clearly, my daughter be able to say, I can't, because that is the time that I have to study for finals. Right. And that was such a visual, obvious thing for everybody because of the levels of planning and the way that we all work on this together. And so this is what I want for kids everywhere and for households everywhere, right? honest conversations about time management, conversations around the time that we need to get stuff done, right? We are reviewing this as a family on Sunday night. And what I love about that is subtly happening here is everybody is learning that there's give and take, right? It is not my job as a mom to orchestrate my entire life around my children or my spouse. And the same is true for everybody here. We all have important things going on in our household each week. So if we see that there's a big project at school coming up on Friday, and we also see that it's a really important week for me at work, and maybe my husband's going to be on travel 2 days, then we get to have the conversation up front. Hey, there's no last minute runs to the store, right? You can see I also have important things going on my calendar. And so these are really empowering conversations that I love, where now we as a family have much cleaner and clearer insight into what's going on in each one of our lives that are important, that requires time, and it really allows us to all be able to support us. So I share all of this with you now at this time of year because if you are, feel like you've just watched your kids struggle a lot this year, they're feeling like maybe they've dropped the ball. You felt like things were always being done last minute. Maybe they're not getting the rest that they need. Things always feel a little frantic. It doesn't have to be that way. And we here at the Pink Bee are going to be re-releasing a brand new edition of the Top 4 Students course. All right. Now, this year, we are not including a physical planner. What we are including for you all is a couple worksheets along with links to kind of top for students approved planners available for you to order out on Amazon so that your students have a little bit more choice in what they may want to use. Also, you may have a student that really loves their Google Calendar, right? And they're doing their planning in there. My daughter does her detailed weekly planning on a Google Calendar. And so we're going to be teaching for that as well. So that way you have a lot more flexibility into what supports your household and your student. So if you would like to get, kind of early pre-release access to this Top for Students course, you can head over to megansumrell.com/student. All right, you'll see all the information about it there. You will be able to pre-order it so that when this comes out prior to the new school year, you and your students will have plenty of time to work through it so that when August, September hits and they're launching back into the school year, they are going to walk in so empowered to take control of their time and calendar, and it changes the playing field for you at home. I can't wait for you guys to check it out. All right, I'll see you back here next week for another episode.